Hey guys, and welcome back to another recent gaming video, and I have officially completed my second full-length game experience for the PlayStation 4, and that game was Dying Light. And I have to say that I was exceedingly impressed with Dying Light, just as I'd hoped I would be. Let me talk a little bit about my thing with Dying Light since it came out long before I got a PlayStation 4. Okay, this actually goes back to PS3, Xbox 360 generation, to the Dead Island games, Dead Island and Dead Island Riptide. Those games were both put out by Techland and Deep Silver, and Techland is the company that made Dying Light. So, I played Dead Island in 2010 or 2011. I think it was 2011. It was not that long after the tornado happened in my town, and I was at the store that I work at now, displaced because the store I worked at was partially destroyed. And me and a friend of mine there named Noah, we actually were both kind of playing that game at the same time on the Xbox 360, and we both loved it. I loved Dead Island, and the quasi-semi-sequel Dead Island Riptide, also enjoyed that very, very much. I didn't look up on here to see if that was something I completed and did a video on or not. I don't recall, because I didn't actually complete Riptide until quite a while afterwards. But both of those games were really well done, first-person view, zombie, apocalypse-style games where you had to survive in a harsh environment, all the while being surrounded by zombies, and not just the shambling dumbass zombies, but different kinds of them. And a Dead Island 2 sequel was announced, was expected or whatever, but what caught me by surprise was the fact that it wasn't going to be made by Techland. It was going to be made by another company, because Techland was moving on to do their own different spin on the kind of zombie games that they had just put two out of. And that game ended up being Dying Light. Now, originally Dying Light was going to be on all four of the major, Microsoft and Sony consoles, meaning last gen and the current gen. And after some time had went by, they realized that what they were trying to do with this game was not going to be capable of, or the previous consoles wouldn't be capable of the vision that they had for this game. Now, I remember being a little upset back then because, as far as I knew, the game was no less than probably 3 or 4 months away from being released all across the board, and they had to cancel the 360 and PS3 versions that soon, or that close to when they were going to come out. So I thought, how much of that game had to have been completed? Why couldn't they have just done something to make sure that Dying Light would come out for the older consoles? Because I didn't have any plans on getting the PS4, even though this was one of those games that I was most jealous of current gen owners of being able to play. So yeah, I was a little salty there for a while. I'm not a game developer. I'm not in their shoes. I don't know what they have to deal with. But the entitled gamer part of me was like, why couldn't you have just known from the beginning it wouldn't have happened? I wouldn't have been so tantalized by your game when I thought I was going to get it for consoles that I did own. But anyway, those fell by the wayside. The game came out, I believe it was in January of 2015, and it got really good reviews, and it was sounding like it was pretty freaking awesome. And I was so jealous. I wanted that game so bad. And anyway, transport here to the current time. It's March 31st at the moment. Just last month in February, I got a PS4, and Dying Light was one of my first purchases. It was one of my top 5 or 6 games that I said I have to get on purchase of the console. And now that I've completed the full main storyline of it, I'm ever so glad that I did. It was everything that I'd hoped for and more. let me talk a little bit, I guess, briefly about the story of the game. Essentially, a virus has broken out in this city called Haran, where in the mythology or the universe of this game, basically this Haran had gained the rights to host essentially what in this world was the Olympics, a large multi-international, like global athletic event in this one city. And then this pathogen comes out. I to be honest with you, maybe I missed it in the storyline. I don't know if this was something that somebody in this city released inadvertently, or if the government released it on purpose, or if it just happened, if it was just horrible happenstance that this thing would come out while all these people were in this city. And a couple months after the outbreak, walls have been built up around the city to try to keep it contained, which there's another thing that was kind of glossed over, in my opinion. Like, if an outbreak happens, people are going to leave immediately. How did they manage to keep people in, the people who did have this, how did they manage to keep them within the city? Like I said, maybe I missed something in the story, and it was released on purpose, and it was released in such a way that they were able to cut off the city from outside before people could get out, before people realized what was going on. I don't know. Not super important, really. The thing to know is that you are a GRE operative, if operative is a correct word. It's a global relief effort, but you're kind of an operative of some federal or government entity, and you are a capable soldier type person, and you get dropped into the city to find a file that a ruthless warlord or drug lord or whatever has obtained, that has information in it about the disease, the cure, something like that. I believe it's about the cure or pivotal research towards that cure, and you are sent in to go find it, but I guess I won't really splurge on spoiler details, but more than meets the eye with this file and why you have to go get it. So you're dropped into the city, you parachute in, and the first scene is basically you plunking down on a city street and being attacked by some, soldierous thugs, and then you get saved by another group, and they take you to their main outpost, which is these two particular tall buildings in the middle of the part of the city where you drop into the slums, basically. And you kind of like awaken there to find that you were saved, but one of the people who came to save you, who's a part of this little group that's holed up in the middle of the slums, died or got infected because of the rescue mission for you. So there's some brief animosity already shown towards you by some of these people. Some of the main characters that you're involved with are Brecken, who's basically the leader of this group. Rahim, who is this younger kid, I guess, probably like early 20s, who is a little reckless, and you kind of have to rein him in at times and watch over him a little bit. And I believe Rahim's sister, Jade, she was actually like an athlete in the games. But now this whole group and several other people are what they call runners, and I guess basically the runners' main jobs is to help people out in the city, go retrieve any of the supply drops that come into their area of the city before these thugs can get them first. The thugs work for a guy named Rice, which is another guy. He's actually a guy that you were sent in to try to find. Rice would be one of my minor complaints about the game. I don't have too many complaints, but Rice would be one of them. Not so much that he shouldn't exist in the game, but okay, a lot of this game, a lot of Dying Light and even Dead Island to an extent kind of simulates or even rips off the Far Cry games and a lot of first-person kind of games. I guess you could even say Fallout and the Elder Scrolls games like Skyrim. These all are kind of lumped into this certain open-world, first-person genre. but there's so many things about this that reminded me of Far Cry 3 and Far Cry 4, and one of them would be that Far Cry 3 had an amazing antagonist in a character named Voss, who was like a leader of a pirate group who antagonizes you throughout the game, or throughout the first part of Far Cry 3. He's not even the main boss of that game, but he was definitely the standout character of Far Cry 3 by far. I think Rice was a pale imitation by Techland to kind of create an interesting antagonist, and he just came off, in my opinion, he was way more cliched than Voss ever would have been. But Rice is a guy that you have to contend with, and his thug soldiers all throughout the city. Sometimes you even have to work for him in an effort to try to scrounge up antizin. Antizin is this like an antibiotic, or it's not a cure, but it's something that holds off the symptoms and the effects of the virus in case you are infected. If you use antizin, you can stave it off and keep yourself basically from turning into a zombie, but you can't cure yourself. Like I said, the cure is a big part of the driving force of what you do in this game. And you have all these other forces that are working against you or parallel to you. So Rice, kind of a pale, cliched version of an antagonist, but you go throughout the world, and this is one of the things where the game super excels, in my opinion. Although I think the graphics are really, really good, I do think that some of the character models and certain things about the graphics are a little bit of a letdown, but this is still a dynamic, perpetual, like always in motion world with a day and night cycle, and you go out into the world and you save survivors. You pick up those supply drops and try to keep them from getting stolen by Rise's thugs. You have to kill, of course, tons of zombies, do a lot of missions. There's a lot of fetch quests. There's a lot of even like escort missions and whatnot. But it's a busy world, and it's always keeping you going. And you can discover things throughout the world, like weapons and all kinds of supplies and things that can be crafted. And this is one of the things I loved about like the difference between Dead Island and Dying Light. In Dead Island, you were basically normal people. You had a rapper, you had a waitress, a stewardess, or whatever. You just like had these kind of normal guys thrust into this horrible situation. But this guy, it's the way I used to describe the difference between the guy in Silent Hill and the characters in Resident Evil. The Silent Hill guy was just a normal guy, and he didn't shoot straight, and he was panicky, and he was weak. And then the characters in Resident Evil were all these basically like a police force or a SWAT force or soldiers or special agents. So they were more capable. Well, the guy in Dying Light is more like, you know, a member of the STARS team or whatever. He is strong, he can run. The people in the tower are surprised at just how well he takes to the parkour elements, and that's a big part of the game I don't even think I've jumped into yet. Traversing the world in Dying Light is done by running, jumping, ziplining, parkour elements left and right, and it makes moving around in a world like this so awesome. It's so well done. I have played a little bit of Mirror's Edge. It does, you know, kind of simulate that a little bit. They kind of, you know, went for the Mirror's Edge parkour effect. But the graphics, the grittiness, the realism of Dying Light makes it that much more fun, in my opinion, than the kind of flashy, colored animation of Mirror's Edge. But this entire world map is designed for this parkour element. It's done so well. I can't think of an open world that was utilized so well for the gameplay experience. Like a Grand Theft Auto 5's world is huge and realistic, but there's also lots of places where there's really nothing going on. In Dying Light, essentially everywhere you go is someplace you can run to, climb to, find things, scavenge for materials, find zombies, find soldiers, whatever. and you have so much fun zipping around the world in the way that they gave you to travel in. There is no, like in Dead Island, there were several fast travel points that you would find. Once you got to a place and it had a fast travel point, you could fast travel to that without having to cross the map. Even though you got to drive in vehicles in Dead Island, and you don't get to do that in Dying Light, you don't want vehicles or fast travel in this game. It's just that much fun. And later on in the game, I got a grappling hook that was sort of like a Spider-Man kind of thing. I just aim at the edge of a roof, an overhang, an awning, the top of anything really, and I would just zip up to it. I was like, this just made it even that much more fun, because you could be getting attacked by zombies and you can just basically grapple your way out of a sticky situation like that. It just has to be experienced, to be honest. It's almost to the level of Grand Theft Auto 5, where when you're in the middle of doing missions and you just feel like fucking around in the game for a while and you just explore and find stuff to do, and in Dying Light, you just find yourself ziplining and climbing and jumping to this place and that place to see how high you can get in the game. I don't like heights, and there are a lot of situations in this game that it put me in a place where I started to feel that sense of vertigo, like, oh gosh, even being a little bit sick and not wanting to make my character look down. Like I said, I can't say enough about how well this game did in so many aspects. But I haven't really talked about the zombies, and I wanted to talk about the zombies because, just like in Dead Island, Dying Light has many varieties of zombies. Your normal, shambling, I think they were just called biters in the game. Then they had the runners, who were these super aggressive, freshly infected people. Sometimes they would even talk like they were still normal. But they're really fast. They dodge and parry like a mother. You have these ones that explode. You have these big bruisers that carry these pieces of rebar with concrete on them, and they slam them down really hard. They're slow, but they're also super tough. And then you even ratchet that up later. There are these ones I think they call demolishers, and they run and just shoulder into you like freaking Juggernaut or Rhino or a football player. Just like, those were tough at first, and then I figured out later on, once I was able to actually get stuff like shotguns, you just perch yourself up top on something and you just blow them away with the shotguns. But anytime you use anything loud, grenades, bombs, explosives, shotguns, guns of any type really, you attract those runners from wherever they may be, and they'll just come and come and come. But at one point in the game, you're always able to search the corpses of anything to loot what they may have on them. You also get the ability to camouflage yourself once you earn this particular skill, and you do the Walking Dead thing, and you smear yourself with the guts of the zombie that you killed, and the other zombies suddenly kind of just see you as a zombie as well. It will wear off over time, or if you attack, it goes away, the effect goes away, although there's another skill that you could get for that would allow you to perform attacks and not lose your camo due to it. Just awesome. Then there were, my least favorite zombies were these ones that just explode if you get too close to them, which is fine because if you're paying attention, you can kind of see them shambling towards you, and then they start going like this until they pop. But sometimes you open a door in an apartment complex and there's nowhere to go, and you walk in and it's just like poo and you're dead. That made me rage a few times, I guarantee. So I've talked a little bit about the story, the antagonist, the stuff that you're doing. The last thing I think I really wanted to cover in the game was, a lot of people have a complaint about the end, basically the boss battle, and that, I don't know if you'll consider this spoilers or not, so I'll just say spoilers for boss battle. It's a quick time event. Now, I heard those complaints and I thought, that's kind of disappointing. And then I played the finale of the game, and I was like, you know what? No, it's not disappointing in my opinion. Two reasons for this. One, the bulk of the final portion of the game makes you play this in single player, because you can do co-op, online co-op in this game, with the exception of the very beginning of the game and in this finale sequence. But from the moment you enter into the building where Rise is at the very top and you have to get to him, you spend the majority of that practicing all of your parkour skills. Running, jumping, dodging, all this kind of stuff away from tons and tons of all the different kinds of zombies, including, I forgot to mention, the volatiles. Because this game has a day and night cycle, and at night these things called volatiles come out. They can't be out in the sun or any kind of UV light, but they come out at night, and they're super OP, which is why I shied away from them most of the time. Or I would mess around with them at night, ducking in and out of safe zones. But I managed to kill a few, but usually only when morning had come, and I would chase them down, and I'd get a couple hits on them if they got stuck somewhere. But in this final sequence, you even have these volatiles following after you, and it, like I said, it tests everything that you've learned in the game about your ability to run, jump, climb, dodge, knock into these things, everything. Even I forgot another one called the Screamers. These little kid zombies that they start to scream. They don't attack you. They just scream, and it melts your hit points away until you get up next to them and you disable them. Basically, you like choke them out, whatever it was. You even had to deal with one of those in it. But the point is, you go through this long sequence of being chased, and then you go through this long sequence of climbing up through this building while there's zombies everywhere. That's what the game was all about. Yes, you attacked stuff, and it was mostly melee attacks, and it was mostly souping up a nice weapon. Like, oh, I forgot to mention this earlier. I was getting to it. Because of the fact that your guy is like a soldier and a more capable guy, he can craft items on the fly. In Dead Island, you had to go to crafting stations. So you had to go out in the world and gather stuff up and then come back to a place. This guy's badass enough that if he's got the required items and components of something, he can do it on the fly. Craft something, repair something, etc., etc. So while you have that aspect of the game, you soup up your weapons, you give them fire effect or electricity effect or poison or bleeding, and you do this, basically most of the game is you just chop a thing a couple of times and down it goes. The emphasis of the game was always on the parkouring elements, and the emphasis on the majority of the finale is the same way. So when you finally get through all of that, oh Lord, did I die many times trying to get to where Rice was at the end, including one night when it was like, or one morning where it was 3 o'clock and I had to get up in a couple hours for work and I needed to get a few more hours of sleep. I just had to quit. I had to rage quit because I couldn't do it. It kept setting me so far back. I was so done. So my point is, yeah, I suck. I know that I'm a scrub. But by the time I had attained the top of that tower, the fact that they gave me a QuickTime event with 6 or 7 button presses to dispatch Rise and get the stuff that I came there for was completely fine with me. If I had made all that other progress and then got to the top and then I had an epic boss battle, I would have done it. I would have fought for it. I would have tried as hard as I could, and I would have relished beating him. But it felt like a reward almost to have a QuickTime event and be able to get to the end of the game and be done. Okay, so I think that's pretty much all my thoughts for Dying Light. Now, I've said it in the past, I'm not really much of a score guy, but if I had to give Dying Light like a out of 10 score, it would be a 9 for sure. There's very little about it that let me down. Like I said, Rise being kind of a cliched character was a bit of a letdown, and just a few little other things that they're not even really prominent enough for me to be like, yeah, this thing and this thing and that thing. It's not a perfect game by any means, but it's really, so far, one of my favorite PS4 experiences. It's everything that I wanted and more. And as you've seen from this, and if you saw my pickups video, I have the version that has the DLC on it called The Following. I'm getting ready to go play that. I'm getting ready to go start on that right now. So, the next video I do will hopefully be me finishing The Following DLC, and I'll do a video about that. So thanks guys for listening to me ramble for way too long. Appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next video.